He's the champion of economic, political, social, and environmental justice. Reverend Malcolm Damon is the executive director of the Economic Justice Network. We welcome him now for our interview to talk about the third stream of the three committees which support the work of the high-level panel that is assessing the impact of legislation enacted, passed by this Parliament since 1994. Reverend Damon, good morning and welcome to you.
Good morning. Thank you.
It's good to have you here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We had an opportunity to talk to the chairperson of the panel, former President Kgalema Motlanthe. He gave us a broad overview about what the high-level panel seeks to do. And we spoke to your colleagues as well for the two other committees.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to have you now representing the work of the Committee on Land Reform. Tell us about your broad focus as the committee.
Yeah, as the name say, the committee will focus on the issues of land. And obviously, as you've indicated as well, that we'll look at the legislation that has been promulgated over the last 20 years when it comes to land issues. And in our particular case, we want to look at the issues of land redistribution and restitution. Secondly, we want to look at land reform in the context of alleviation of poverty and inequality. And the third one is around tenure security and rural people's capacity to gain access to land. So these are broadly the three issues we're looking at, because the Constitution is very clear about property and land. The fact is the Constitution say that people should have access to land. But then it also says that government must promote, in section 25(5) of the Constitution, it says, the state must take a reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources to foster conditions which will enable citizens to gain access to land on an equitable basis. So it's within section 25 of the Constitution that we are framing our particular work, looking at the issues of land broadly, as I've indicated, and I can explain more as we go along in the
Sure,
discussion.
most certainly. I'm sure you get an opportunity to do that. But I just want to tease out this point first. Land. And many commentators have said, and research has also shown, that it is at the base of the kind of socio-economic circumstances that the majority of the citizens of this country find themselves in. So yours is quite a heavy responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know that other committees, the working groups, will look at the issue of inequality, and others will look at the issue of social cohesion and nation building. But we would argue that if one look at the issue of land, it is central to South Africa's inequality issues. Why is South Africa one of the most unequal societies in the world? Why have we not made extensive progress in the area of land restitution and redistribution? Obviously, in the area of restitution, and we've spoken to the Land Commission as well, a lot has been done. But the problem is, land is central to South Africa, it's central to our future, and it's central to some of the problems we're experiencing today.
On that note, how do you intend to involve the people who are at the receiving end of that particular experience of landlessness in particular? How do you envisage you'll work with them in informing your own responsibility as you execute your assignment in this regard?
Yeah. Through the call for submissions, we hope that the citizens of South Africa, even communities, people from villages, will come forward and tell us about their experiences when it comes to land. Their experiences with particular legislation, their experiences when it comes to the redistribution of land, the access to land, how they've experienced that. And as I indicated, the call for submissions is also in the light of these three broad focuses we have. So we are calling on the people of South Africa to tell us about their experiences when it comes to land redistribution and restitution, especially in the context of the skewed patterns of land ownership based on racial discriminative laws and practices. yes, we are 20 years into democracy, more than 20 years. And yes, we've done various progress have been made. And as I've indicated, a lot of people got the restitution for land, whether it's to go back to the land or get compensation for the land. But the fact is that is still skewed, and still too many people within South Africa, and especially those that previously benefit, still have access and have ownership of land, because it seems they are using certain tactics and ways, to kind of keep, and obviously they're using so-called legal, ways to do that through courts, etc. But the point is, it's skewed, the redistribution pattern. People don't have access to land, and we're calling on people to tell us their experiences when it comes to this. That is the first one. The second one is land reform in the context of poverty and inequality. The working group's mandate is framed by the overarching focus on issues of poverty, inequality, and unemployment, as I've indicated, and also social exclusion. And when we look at budgetary allocations and spending in respect of the different aspects of land reform and also rural development, we would like to hear how the current policies and the allocations of the budget, when it comes, whether it's within the ministry or how people experience it when they apply for particular resources when it comes to land, how that has played itself out, and whether it is reducing poverty and inequality or whether it is potentially exacerbating it. And therefore we want to ask people to tell us how within budget reform and how allocations has favored the poor and other interest groups. So that's the second one. And then the third one, it's more broadly, because we've realized when you look at the issue of land, there's a question of urbanization, obviously. There is the issue that still a lot of people are in the rural areas. And we know that the majority of poor people are in the rural areas. We know that a lot of women are in rural areas. So we've looked at the issue of land within a broader context, namely what we call sustainable livelihoods and rural development, so that we can also hear from people if there's maybe particular research or particular expertise or particular debates or discussions around sustainable livelihoods and rural development. But that's within the context of land security or tenure and rural people's capacity to protect and enforce the land. We know that in South Africa, one of the issues, land, as you've indicated at the beginning, is quite a contentious issue. But there's also an issue of competition. I mean, for instance, mine owners and those who wants to use the land because of particular minerals. A lot of times there are competition and clashes because communities should say, no, but communities need to be consulted, obviously. But then there's tension in the communities, because some would say, no, we don't want our land to be mined for gold or diamonds or coal or whatever the case may be. And others would say, no, but we need work. The kind of debates around these issues. So these are some of the issues we'd like to address, including the issue, as I've indicated, of also security of tenure. We know that what happened with legislation, people are on farms, they live for years on farms, and then all of a sudden, when the farm worker realizes that a particular period will come to an end, then people are taken off the land. We experience that right here in Cape Town on farms, etc. And those are the experiences. So we can look also at security of tenure when people have access to land, whichever way that may be, and with whichever the legislation, will they be able to stay on the land, or are there those more powerful who push them out of the land, or then just use the legislation in their favor? Okay, 10 years, it's not 10 years, 9 years, now you need to go. Those type of things where certain things are used not to the benefit of those who need to benefit.
You've used the very interesting word skewed patterns of land ownership, and you said these are enduring over 20 years into our democracy. I think that begins to suggest what we should expect to see in your report. Even before you undertake your task, what do you envisage your report to be about? What should it address?
Well, obviously, as you, in the light of our discussion and within the framework, obviously it will look at what has been the impact of land policies and land legislation up to now. And as you say, if the assumption is already there, and we've seen that, that the majority of the land has not been given back to the majority of people of South Africa or those who should really benefit. Why has that been the case? Now, I've intimated to one issue, which is the issue of budget, kind of just financial resources. We know there's a second issue around willing buyer, willing seller, and we know that government and parliament is also addressing those issues. And we know these are the issues that's coming to the fore. And we know that also the debate out there, it's almost like, although we know land can be expropriated, it's almost like people think, no, land cannot. It can only be appropriated when you've paid according to cost, But we know these paid according to skewed debates or certain dominant, I don't want to use ideologies, but certain dominant policies or, ideas that are there and people don't realize, but actually that is not the case. So how do we change that so that really black people in South Africa, from different backgrounds, from different historical realities, will be able to really benefit. And I'm using that deliberately in some ways to say black people, because we know the history of South Africa. We cannot run away from the fact that land has been in the hands of white people for a long time.
Your purpose, your responsibility as a committee, but indeed, like you said, within the context of the broader mandate of the high-level panel, it brings up and heightens the pain of the dispossessed, I would imagine. But at the same time, hope springs eternal from what you have just outlined as your focus, because you're looking at remedies to look at, among other things, at the continuing patterns or skewed patterns of ownership and the results and the consequence of that in terms of the broader socio-economic development of our country. What should happen to that report, in your view, as the committee? I don't know if you even had the time to reflect, but I'm sure you have got views about. Then here you are undertaking this task, and you're going to submit this report to Parliament, and it deals with an issue like you have now outlined and articulated to us. What is your view about what should happen to that report?
Yeah, the first place, and we've had some discussions on that, not fully yet, but the bare minimum for us is the fact that the Speaker and the Speakers Forum, who has appointed us, and as we know, within the kind of broader framework of Parliament and legislation, etc., that in the first place, the Speaker will accept that report and make it public to the public, as soon as possible. So that people can see this is the work of an independent panel, because Parliament is saying, or the legislative arms of Parliament is saying, but it's not enough only to promulgate certain legislation. It's not important to have certain acts in place, but one needs to look at the impact of legislation. And if that report then shows that there are certain loopholes, that there are certain vacuums, that there are certain areas that need to be addressed, that Parliament would address that. And I was thinking the other day, this is now my personally, when we were discussing these issues, because next year, by mid-next year, the report should be out, etc. And I was thinking, I hope that at some stage there will be maybe a year after that, even a conference or a discussion, where people would say, now, okay, what has been done? What has been some of the issues that Parliament has been looking at? Because at the end of the day, we are here to also serve, just like Parliament is serving, and that Parliament and the legislature would then take up these issues and the loopholes so that we can address them intensively. And we realize that some of the issues is a question of implementation, so that also where it's not a question, because in a lot of cases, if one look at South Africa and the discussions, a majority of cases people would say South Africa has excellent legislation, but it's in the implementation that so how do we address the issues of implementation? Where is the loopholes? Where is the blockages? What's causing those blockages so that we can make progress, and especially make progress in the area of land, because we've seen what happened in our neighboring countries. We don't want to see a problem where there are certain almost low levels of tension and violence because of land. That we don't want to see. We rather need to address it as soon as possible.
You also centralize people. You place people in different ways throughout. You put people at the center of your purpose. And you said that the call for submissions has already been issued. We all know this this week. I'd like you to reiterate that and just tell us, why is it important for people to take that call seriously? Why is it important for them to respond?
Yeah, because we're making these calls for submissions to people all over South Africa, and we hope it will be in different languages as well. Based on certain of the provinces, etc. But we are making this call because that's the only way, really, we can substantiate what's happening on the ground. You can maybe pick up a newspaper and you can say, read something about land. I can use my own experience. I work for almost like 14 years in the Richtersveld now. The Richtersveld had one of the biggest land restitution issues. But now, after that, what's happening there in the Richtersveld? What's happening to Alexander Bay? What's happening to the mines? What's happening to the land, etc.? What's happening to the committee where you have infighting and some want to kind of use the resources, those kind of things. So it's really that one want to hear from people about how they experience and how they have been affected and impacted by land. Because at the end of the day, it's only through only from hearing from people what we could do, because otherwise what's going to be the benefit? But then secondly, I think an important thing to say for us is, apart from the submissions, I'm sure you've already have discussions around that with the chairperson, that there will be hearings, so we will go out in the provinces. So we want to say, yes, we realize there are those who can write and put their issues on paper, but we realize also there are others who want to speak about the issues, so there will also be that channel. But I think for now, the importance of the submissions is the fact that people from all walks of life, from a person who don't have land to a person who do academic work around land, from a community who want to have access to land or had access to land and are now experiencing certain difficulties. So that it's only through hearing the stories of people and how land has impacted on their life that we will be able to tell Parliament, this is what people are saying. This is the experience of people. The legislation may be saying this, but this is how legislation has played itself out, in communities. This is how people in power have maybe used legislation to their benefit and then depriving others, So it's those kind of things we'd like to hear. And we hope people will respond positively, and even if it's just a letter or an email saying, but also more substantial experiences of people on the ground.
Are you happy about your timeframes? You said you have to have this report now over and done with in August 2017.
Yeah, I think at this stage the timeframes look okay, I think the big thing would be around the provincial hearings and how it plays itself out, and the fact that we'll be able to attract people, and we hope that also from your particular backgrounds and experiences that would help with the communication, because the message needs to get out there, and we know these are expensive. But I think the time frame at this particular stage look reasonable, and we can achieve those. if we can keep to those timeframes.
Is there room for civil society, research institutions, academic institutions, community organizations to be part of this?
Absolutely. I mean, that's where I come from, and I want to believe that that's one of the reasons why I'm on the committee, is because we work as a church-based organization on the one side in South Africa, but also broader, around various issues: food security, access to land issues. We organize, for instance, from our side, alternative mining, but there's various stuff, mining stuff. But we also have a institute, not the institute, we also have a South African network on inequality, a network that looks at inequality. And we hope that people from the different civil society organizations, whether, as you've indicated, those would be academics, or whether those are community-based organizations, or whether those are networks, or whether those are in the rural areas or in the cities, it doesn't matter, from that civil society from various aspects, and also the private sector, obviously, would be able to tell us what they think and feel about these issues, how they experience it.
Reverend Damon, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for the information that you've shared with us. Quite uplifting, and would like to wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.